Hello, good evening, and welcome back to our continuing coverage. This is Kivumbi2017, the show where we track all the big things that the country is talking about. And tonight we've been speaking about party manifestos. We know that this week Jubilee will be launching theirs, NASA next week, and the show will begin. So right now we'll be talking to Professor Nyang' Nyong'o and Amos Kimunya. I introduced them earlier, but I will do that in a short while. But first, let's get this show started. It's a document meant to capture the dreams and ambitions of a people as seen through the eyes of their leaders. But more often than not, those dreams turn into a mirage, with successive governments only managing to achieve a fraction of what they promised on paper. Just what goes wrong? KTN's Timothy Otieno explores how different governments have handled their political roadmaps within their manifestos.
Dinga!
It's an event characterized by pomp and color. Political parties keen to woo many to their political agenda for the country ahead of the crucial polls. Political party manifestos became popular in Kenya during NAC's 2002 campaigns, a wave that would see 24 years of KANU rule end, as the mammoth crowd listened to Raila Odinga at Uhuru Park before the December 2002 elections. Raila used the opportunity to sell their manifesto.
Tunataka serikali ambayo itaweza kuleta mabadiliko kwa maisha ya wananchi wa Kenya. Serikali ambayo itaweza kufufusha uchumi ambayo imeporomoka. Serikali ambayo itaweza kuimarisha elimu kwa watoto wetu, ambayo itaweza kumaliza umaskini katika nchi yetu.
Political analyst Mark Bichachi argues that NAC may have been the first party to introduce manifestos into Kenyan politics, promising free primary education and a government entertaining a zero tolerance to corruption attitude.
NAC lost in terms of, yes, it brought in free primary education, but it lost the goodwill of the people and the opportunity to fight corruption in this country, which was a golden opportunity. That is the biggest failure of the NAC government.
By the time NAC split into two, one of its factions, PNU, was more than willing to launch a manifesto loaded with promise for the country's growing economy. PNU promised infrastructure, and infrastructure it delivered.
The PNU's policies will provide equitable access to larger slices of the much larger and growing national cake.
What you had then, of course, was a few infrastructure projects, keynote of which was Thika Road. And what that particular government did is it invested a lot in the economy and a lot in infrastructure, which was something Kenyans had not seen before. But what they didn't do is they didn't put up structures that would make sure that the infrastructure and the projects that they did would be protected in future from corruption.
But it is the 2013 Jubilee Manifesto that is perhaps the most ambitious in the country's 54-year political history.
The coalition believes in a new brand of politics, one where the national interest is placed above personal gain or tribal advantage.
Tunasema ya kwamba tunataka kuhakikisha tumerahisisha njia ya kuanzisha biashara ndogo ndogo. Tunataka kuhakikisha ya kwamba hizi maforms unaenda unatuma ofisi hii, unaenda ofisi hii, alafu kutoka hiyo unaenda hiyo ingine. Hii ni chances tu ya watu kuchukua pesa waweke kwa mfuko, lakini sio ya kusaidia kijana. Tunataka kuondoa mambo haya yote.
We believe inawezekana kusema na kutenda.
The then-termed dynamic duo of Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto came into office with a manifesto promising Kenyans a digital government that would offer learners in primary school free laptops, as well as continued infrastructural growth, among them 5 state-of-the-art modern stadia at the end of their first term in office.
Thus enabling it to bid to host the 2019 African Cup of Nations and the 2019 World Athletics Championships.
Is that, teacher?
Even though tablets were received by pupils in 2017, 3 years later than anticipated, some promises outlined in the Jubilee manifesto, like the 5 stadia, just refused to hatch.
Kenyans have such a low expectation of our politicians that even when a politician does not deliver what the manifesto promised, we really don't hold them to task. So we've put manifestos to the back burner, and that's because of the tribal way within which we consider our politics.
Political pundits believe that for Kenyans, manifestos seldom spark any meaningful promise, with voters often swayed by political alliances based on tribal affiliation as opposed to political blueprints. And whether or not that perception will change this year could only be determined by how such promises are implemented. Timothy Otieno, KTN News.
All right, so the stage is set there, and as I mentioned earlier, we have Amos Kimunya. He's a former Minister for Finance and also running for Kipipiri, and I can see he's donned in
Jubilee.
Yes, I should have defined the dress code a little bit earlier, right? Maybe you should have come in your, what
Orange.
color is it these days? All right, so Professor Anyang' Nyong'o, also former cabinet minister, right now Kisumu senator, but also running for governor in Kisumu. So thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming for our late night show. This is the last segment of Kivumbi. This is a show that we run every Monday. Now, let me just put this aside for a moment. And earlier we were running a poll on the streets, asking people to figure out what is so important to them that they want to see in a manifesto. And surprise, surprise, they didn't talk about all these grand things. They actually said food. Does that surprise you?
No, it's perhaps coming from the recent drought and the high cost of food prices. You would expect people, the item that has been drummed up within the political circles is about food. And it's only natural that people start thinking of, the basics first. But, governments can't exist for purposes of just satisfying the low-level needs. You must start moving from giving people fish to preparing them to give them nets so that come 5 years down the line, they will not be asking about food, but you have given them the means of producing the food. And I think it's an issue of the current issues, the current situation, which is temporary. But for political parties, and certainly from a Jubilee perspective, we see this as a very short-term problem. But the most important thing is, what is the future? What does the future hold for the Kenyan who not only will get food, but get it in a cost-effective way?
Fair enough, Professor. A lot of people there on the streets, we conducted a poll, and they're saying what they would like to see topmost in any manifesto that comes out in the next few days is how they will address the issue of food. How do you feel about that?
I think that's correct, because at the moment, unga is on everybody's lips. But let me remind you, Joe, as far as I remember, most manifestos have been involved in, even before NAC. Food security has been very important. I remember in our core manifesto 2013, food security was on the top of the agenda. And now I think with this unga crisis, we should think very seriously about food security. Food security should not just be about unga. Food security should be about food as a whole.
Yes.
And our kind of mono-dependence on maize as a source of unga is kind of misplaced, because it doesn't even go well with our traditional sources of carbohydrates. I remember in my society in Nyanza, when I was growing up, maize was considered a kind of special source of unga. There was millet, there was sorghum, there was cassava, all these were very important. And the low production of millet, sorghum, and cassava is something that we should rethink. And we should also think
do you
of
think there's
soya. No, I'm just saying, when we talk about food security, not just food. Of course, the person on the streets talks about food, because that is what concerns them most. Yes. But as people make
But
policy,
do you think they would vote? They'll look at the two of you gentlemen here speaking tonight, and they say, I think that guy has a better idea about food, so I'll vote for them. Is that how it works?
they will. I don't think that these people are fools, by the way. They want to know how you're going to solve the problem.
Yes.
And by the way, I was telling you informally when we were discussing before, I've been surprised at the number of calls, emails, and WhatsApp messages I get asking me, when are you launching your manifesto? Because people are concerned about government policies. And as I was saying, the concerns covers a wide spectrum. There are those who are very concerned because they're party members. They want their party to do something unique. They want their party to address certain issues. They will hold you responsible for what you say. There are those who say, look, we have problems. How are you going to solve them? I mean, in my county, for example, people ask you, look, we have a sugar industry here. We have a rice industry here. They have been stagnating for some time. There was a time when farmers, when they earned money in the sugar industry, they took off the coast.
But isn't it...
These things are real things,
But
Joe.
isn't it true, Prof, that when the results come out on the 9th or whatever it is of August, the truth of the matter is that whatever number of votes you get, you find that your coalition will have more votes in Kisumu than in Nyeri, for example. I mean, we don't need to do any research to find
Joe,
that out. Isn't that true?
Joe, let me interject I think when Kenyans voted and when even at the point of drafting of the new constitution in Bomas, food was so localized. It became such a local issue. And in the wisdom of the Kenyan people, it was actually, it became one of the devolved functions.
Exactly.
So that the food production in Nyandarua is so different from the food production in Nyanza, is so different from in Kirinyaga and the coast. So, indeed, it's something we need to, when we now look at the manifestos.
Policy is still at the national level.
The policy is at the national level.
Exactly. And my point is...
national policy on food is that both parties, or both coalitions, or Jubilee Party and the Professors Coalition.
Whose name you don't seem to remember, but my point...
No, it changes.
My point is this,
at the national level,
do people really care about that? That's what I want to drive at.
At the national level, the two are committed to ensuring the food for everyone.
Your candidate will necessarily get more votes in Nyandarua than in Kisumu, where he comes from. It's not
because food is not the only determinant for getting votes.
Yeah, exactly.
People will be looking at, yes, there's food. There's also education. There's also health. What is happening to jobs for the youth? What is happening to the infrastructural development? What is happening to water issues? People look at the multiplicity of all those things and say, who is providing a better package? Not
ethnicity.
Now, in town...
Not ethnicity.
No. Ethnicity also come in. We want our man. Right? And that's a fact of life.
Doesn't that override everything, every beautiful thing you might have on paper?
It doesn't override because there's a certain number of people, and if you look at the voting patterns, yes, predominantly within Central, Jubilee will win. Predominantly within Nyanza, NASA will win, right? But in all the other areas, there will be splits, right? There's only two extreme areas, that you can almost be sure is 99-99. But across the rest of Kenya, people will then be looking for what is different. Why should I go this way or that way? And that is luckily coming up from the manifestos. You also have a new and emerging middle class. Kenyans are more educated now than they were before. So people are looking for what is this distinguishing factor between these two parties, even at the county level. Yeah. For example,
how do you move from the level where people are so concerned about what they will eat tomorrow to where they can discuss things like SGR that Kimunya and his colleagues in Jubilee have been putting out there on the campaign trail?
Look, Joe, there's a saying that all politics is local.
Yes.
And with the evolution, by the way, local politics is becoming very important. Kenyan citizens now are very conscious of voting at two levels. They're choosing their county leaders. That's why there's much more intense politics electing MCAs than any other position now, by the way.
And there's no tribalism there.
Yeah, and because they realize that, look, these are the people who are going to affect our agriculture, our food production, our health, our environment, our culture, and so on. And when candidates come, by the way, I've gone to these rallies, they ask them, what are you going to do about this? So don't think the people down there are stupid. They do realize that the county government, which now makes a difference. And this is good because it's going to make policy a very important issue in elected leader at the county level. At the national level, yes, presidential elections are the elections which heighten ethnic feeling in this country. Personally, if you ask me, I don't like presidential politics at all. I'd rather we have a parliamentary system of government.
And why is that?
Because you see, in a highly pluralist society like Kenya, having a presidential election is perpetuating the kind of phenomenon that Amos is talking about. And that is not good for democracy, because it polarizes society and reduces national cohesion. You see what I mean? But if you have a parliamentary system, parties will go out there to look for majorities everywhere. And you'll have a much better political path towards national integration, national cohesion than you have now. These presidential politics have been a menace to Kenya since independence. And but in the first Bomas draft, we in ODM, we preferred the parliamentary system. Then we went to a mix. Then we went to this mule that we have now of a constitution. I call it a mule because really you have very good things in it, but you also have problematic things in it, like having a parliamentary system with a presidential executive. And that presidential executive then appoints ministers outside parliament and makes, forgive me, more or less an non-entity in parliament because so important in terms of being a leader of government business. So I really think that it would have been better to have a prime minister to play the kind of role that Duale is playing. It's much more meaningful in advancing democracy. Otherwise, you just get a sycophant who is always singing to the praises of the executive and not leading a parliamentary party as such. And I think that in looking at the constitution anew, whether it happens in my lifetime or not, but finally, Kenyans will have to reckon with the parliamentary system of government.
Great. So let's come back to this whole thing of manifestos. I know both of your parties have not launched the manifestos. It will happen in the next.
But we know what is in
the next 2 days. But you've been throwing things out there, and there's one that I cannot leave without talking about, and this is the whole question of free secondary education. And I'm just going to play a few clips of the two coalition leaders speaking about this. Can we just have that maybe?
Sisi tumesema tukishika namna hii kuanzia Septemba watoto watasoma bure katika shule zote za sekondari. Sio Januari, Septemba mwaka huu. Tamu ya mwisho watoto watalipa karo katika sekondari zetu zote.
Honorable Raila Odinga, let me inform you that when you make policy, it requires planning. Tunaelewana? Ukija kunena kitu, usinene ati ndio upigiwe makofi. Sisi wakati tulinena, tulijua ni kwa nini tunasema Januari, kwa sababu tunajua where the gaps are that we must meet in order for us to be able to offer our fellow Kenyans free secondary education.
Professor Nyong'o.
In the CORD manifesto that we had in 2013, we had something called free and sustainable basic education in our manifesto. And it's nothing new, by the way. By the way, it's very interesting that in 2002, when we said during the campaigns that we're going to have free primary school education, the same Uhuru Kenyatta said that it was utopian nonsense. It is on record, having refuted the possibilities of ever having free primary school education here. And he said he used the same thing. I became Minister for Planning. And Amos remembers, we implemented free primary, that as soon as we got into government, even before the budget was passed. In other words, where there is a will, there is a way. You see, and to say about planning, by the way, having free basic education, if you ask me, we have already planned it because it has been there since 2013 when we did the CORD manifesto, which was called Unlocking Kenya's...
But in fairness, I mean, before we talk about the amount...
Let me just finish. Our manifesto
September.
manifesto was called Unlocking Kenya's Potential, okay? Now, my idea about a manifesto, if you're writing a manifesto, like we did the NAC one, which was called Democracy and Popular Empowerment. The moment you're writing a manifesto, you're already planning how you're going to implement it. That's why it was possible for us, by February 2003, we had already drafted the first draft of the economic strategy for wealth and employment creation, because we had already been planning when we were writing the manifesto. So what Uhuru Kenyatta is saying, to me, is splitting hair. I mean, if now we are preparing a NASA manifesto, we are already planning how we shall implement it, because you must hit government running.
But in September, quite frankly, I mean, you will barely have found your way in government. I mean, the election ends.
We implemented free primary school education the week we entered government.
That was a special circumstance.
You see,
in 2003, I think we were having...
But it is true that the president did say that there was nothing for free.
That time he was in the opposition.
Yeah.
Then, you know, we are talking of 15 years ago. Yeah. And let's not go back there. Now we have seen the light. We've moved on.
Yeah.
But I think the most important thing is...
I'll take that.
The most important thing is that September is only a month from the elections. September, 1st of September is the beginning of a new term, or the continuation of an existing term. Now, we saw, if you are talking of at the beginning of the year, because we actually implemented for NAC at the beginning of the year, because you got an inflow of new kids coming in, right? So if you are doing it mid-year, right? What happens to all these kids who want to come and join school in third term, right? Because there's free education. Yeah. How do you sort them out? Do you have the teachers? Do you have the infrastructure? Do you have the money? Most schools have already
even
paid.
January still is within the same financial year.
No,
so
but
it's
you
not
see,
like the
you
financial
have...
year has ended, because it's all about money, is it not?
But you have a new parliament, right? That will be there. You'll have new cabinet secretaries. They need to be vetted. They need to be approved by parliament even before they can start implementing. Yeah. So there's lots of processes that have been brought in by this new constitution. Under NAC, it was just one thing. We actually got appointed ministers even before we went to parliament, right? The elections were 27th of December. I was appointed minister on 3rd of January, right? We went to parliament, you know, like 1 week after. Now, this time round, you cannot do that. The president would have to assume there's even some issue about some elections, yeah? Right? So by the time it's all determined, you're already in September. By the time you're getting people appointed, people then to take the papers to parliament and to do the budget, it's already too late. And you're not going to commit funds unless they've been approved by parliament.
No.
So there's a new dispensation that we need to think of when we make pronouncements. Let's remember, we have a new constitution that has set some framework of how you do things, right? And it's populist to say it, but it's not practical.
No. Let me tell you something. Joe, we've gone through all that. But I think, remember what I said, where there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you have to get the money from the budget, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
You can get money from donors to start a thing. It's possible.
But that takes ages.
No, it doesn't take ages. That's what I'm saying. When you're writing a manifesto, you've already started planning.
Yeah.
We are planning. We are not going to tell you exactly what that plan is. But when you say September...
But we need to see it.
No, when you say
credible.
No. When you say September, I mean, we're credible people. We've been government ministers.
But the
by all
plan
means. But
needs to be credible.
The plan is credible if it is done by people as us. You know it is credible.
I wish it was only you doing it alone.
No, not alone. But I'm assuring you.
Yeah.
It must be credible, because I cannot be associated with something which is not credible. No. So let's just cool our heels.
Yeah.
Let us cross the bridge when we get there. If we get there and it's in a government and we don't do it, then say, look, you guys are just engaged in propaganda. But to judge us ex cathedra, it's not fair.
It's just the practicalities of it.
No, but we're telling you, why do you doubt us?
And also the money, because right now the money allocated to the entire education sector is just about 40 billion.
But you see, the same argument were used about free primary school education, by the way. I remember the same argument. The money is not there, you have no time to plan it, blah, blah, blah.
But we knew then there was money that was, kind of leaking out. Because when you look at this education
issue... For example, now we know lots of money has leaked out.
No, but we know...
if we can get it, we'll definitely do it.
You're not going to get it in a month. You're not getting it in a day. Prof, we've been there with you. We've tried.
Look,
but Joe, let me look at it this way.
Yeah.
If you're promising people that you're going to get into free primary education or free secondary education,
free basic education, we call it basic.
Basic,
because for us, basic is from
up to Form 4.
Up to Form 4.
Now,
and that has been
secondary education because up to primary is already being taken care of.
Yeah.
As we are saying, we will do secondary education from next year, because we realize, and I want to look at what Prof and his team are looking at. Give people free primary education from September. At the same time, give 45% off. You know, it gets confused. At one point, I hear 45% of the budget. At times, I hear 45% of the revenue. Let me take the lower figure, 45% of the revenue. Come next year, what are we talking of? 1.5 trillion is the revenue projected from the figures. Now, once you take out 45% of that, remember salaries, when you talk of the defense, the police, and all that, and civil service, it takes 50% of the salary. 45 goes to the counties, 50 goes to salaries. You are 5%. You will not pay the debt, you will not pay the consolidated fund services, which is a fast charge on our budget. You've not even done in development. You've not provided money for education. You've not provided money for health. I mean, the whole thing is just like, please the counties will give you 45%. Please the parents will give you education from September. Please everyone, there's money. But there's no money. It's not, simply not possible.
So thankfully, Professor Nyong'o is here.
Look.
45% to the counties.
I've been a member of the Finance Committee of the Senate.
Yes.
I'm also chairman of the Public Accounts Committee of the Senate. So I know how the money goes, and then I know how the money should be accounted for by the governors.
But the numbers are given are correct.
Let me just finish.
Let's start from the numbers.
No. I let you speak, and you finish. I didn't interrupt you. So give me that, that space. Look, in the Finance Committee of the Senate, we have one principle we've been going with. Resources follow functions. In Schedule 4 of the Constitution, the functions between the national government and the counties are very clearly spelled out. What the national government has done is really to sit on some of the functions of the counties unfairly. The government is supposed to make policies and regulations for counties in matters of functions where counties have those functions, like agriculture. We do agree that Afya House should make policy and have regulations. Beyond that, Afya House should surrender those resources to the counties. We also say that in the Ministry of Agriculture, agriculture is a devolved function. The Agriculture Ministry should confine itself to policy, regulations, and certain functions related to agriculture which reinforce the interdependence between the two levels of government, which is also in the Constitution. Cross-cutting. Now, when you do that, you'll find that a lot of money is wasted in the national government in what I call a consumptive bureaucracy. If you release that money, it will account substantially for the 45% of the revenue that you undertake to the counties. At the moment, the Jubilee government is saying that they're taking 32% to the counties. Okay?
Which is going
now. If you're taking 32% to the counties, you shouldn't be too worried about the 45%, especially when a good part of it is going to be creamed off from the consumptive bureaucracy that you have. A bureaucracy that can afford to engage in getting a foreign debt whose money never comes back to the country. These are some of the consumptive tendencies we want to rein in so that this money goes to the counties. In line with our principle in the Finance Committee, resources follow functions.
I agree.
Okay, so once we've done that, I can present you the arithmetic and to show you that what we are saying is not rocket science, by the way, and it's not an impossibility.
But what you two gentlemen are disagreeing about is just about, what, 5 months, something like that, that someone wants to start in September, the other one in January. At the end of the day, the same question will dog the both of you about where the money is actually going to come from. Because by some estimates I've seen, it will need an extra 100 billion shillings to be able to do this.
You know what happened is, we as Jubilee came up and said, we are going to offer free secondary education from January. And NASA did a copycat situation and said, we'll do the same, but we'll do it in September, which is not possible, right? Now,
Well, they
I
had
wish
it in
they'd
their
said
manifesto
we
in
would also do
2013.
it in January, but we also do it like this, to make a difference. But, telling Kenyans out there, very gullible Kenyans, very poor parents, that from September, and the head teachers and the principals of the schools, right now they are not even receiving all the money because, the funds are not flowing as fast as they should.
No, obviously.
Now telling them from now on, don't even, the parents who are going to pay don't, right?
Yeah, we'll
so that everything will come, and it doesn't come. We are collapsing the education system at a time when the kids are sitting in the exams.
We'll need to move on. Obviously, at least what is clear here is that we'll have...
What is clear is free basic education is possible.
Which we all agree.
And for us, it has been... I remember I've been writing so many manifestos in life, actually, beginning all the way from the National Democratic Party, just before Ford and Ford Kenya. And in all those manifestos, I insisted, being a social democrat, that two things must be provided to Kenyans, health and education.
Yes.
Let alone food, which are basic. There are certain things which we call basic needs. These basic needs, you have to, as a modern democracy, you have to guarantee your citizens these basic needs. Okay. One basic need is basic education.
Yes.
If you go to Germany, by the way, you'll find that people get basic education up to Form 4. From then on, then they choose two paths to higher education. The majority go to polytechnics. The minority go to universities. Why? Because the polytechnics are the ones which prepare them to have skills which they're going to use in industry and other sectors of the economy. And by the way, graduates of polytechnics in Germany are very highly valued. When you go to university, you now specialize in research, science,
the
universities, the academia, and so on. And that is why free basic education is important, so that all those people who go to school arrive at a point when they're in a position to develop skills which are important for their livelihood.
Prof, let me move on along faster because it looks to me like most parents out there at least can sleep easy knowing that in January, at least, whatever happens, there will be...
Why are you afraid of September?
Yeah?
Why are you afraid of September?
No,
it's not
September
practical.
is included in January, by January. I'm just saying that
whoever
takes over,
this is
from what you're saying...
I remember 202.
Yeah.
Uhuru insisted primary school is not possible. And apparently he has interpreted my dear friend, Ms. Kimunya, who I think is a free thinker, by the way. I'm kind of afraid that he has imbibed this thing. I mean, Amos, what you should say as a scholar, there's a possibility that it might happen in September. But we believe
it's better
January,
than...
Yeah,
it's not possible in September.
No, you can't say it's not possible.
First of all, the teachers are just being recruited. You get an influx of kids in school because there's free primary education, free secondary education, and you don't have the teachers. What are you basically doing?
Well,
and you're telling people to start school in third term. I mean, schools begin in first term. There must be a systematic way of implementing policy.
Who tells you that you cannot reorganize the school?
No, but we are not going to reorganize things in a month.
Who tells you we can't?
No,
okay, gentlemen.
It's only in us that we reorganize things like that.
Especially you plan for it ahead of time.
This is my show, gentlemen.
I will tell you. Okay.
All of you.
Okay.
This is my show.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move along to something else.
Okay.
Obviously, I can invite both of you to just talk about this free secondary
forever and
education.
ever.
We are passionate about it.
Yeah, I'm sure you can ride in the same car after this. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is this whole thing of cost of living. And I've heard some snippets here and there. I've heard, for example, your presidential candidate, Professor Nyong'o, talking about something like rent, reducing rent. How does that happen? People say, well, this is a free market economy.
Yeah.
I charge what I want. If you don't want to pay, you get the next guy to
There's something called a rent control tribunal. You know that? You see, if you are going to deal with poverty, and you know salaries are low, you don't want somebody spending 60% of his salary on rent. You mean that this fellow will not be able to send their kids to school?
So what do you do about it?
Just a minute. Joe, please be patient. It means that his
I'm eager to hear that.
It means that his kids will have kwashako. It means that this guy will not be in a position to organize his own budget to meet other basic needs. Now, this is where rent control comes in. I know there are cities, like in the US, there are certain areas where you cannot charge beyond a certain rent. It doesn't matter what capital you invested. this area, this is the rent that prevails, you are not going to charge more.
But you're given incentives.
You are given incentives.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So, talking about rent is very important in our republic. I know people, I met people, the civil servants, by the way, when I was a minister. They will tell us, Professor, the best way to invest your money is to build houses in Kibera. Why? You spend very little, you get very high returns. I was shocked. These are people making money out of those poor fellows by putting very little capital. And if you look at the conditions how these people live and the amount of rent they pay for where they live, it's absolutely inhuman. You see, so one thing that we could do, apart from talking about rent, is what is called urban renewal or urban rehabilitation, where government comes in, pays this landlord their money, you go away, okay? Takes these places, rehabilitates them, and puts up houses worthy of human habitation.
Yeah.
That's what they've done in China.
But
you see, so the first thing you do, which is a remedial action, is rent control. The second thing you do...
Which has sent shivers down many people's spines, because
Yeah,
they're saying,
because
I am
of-
an investor, putting my
because
money
of this
in
capitalist behavior.
rent.
You invest...
But it's not capitalism. You see, the example Prof is giving of what happens in the US, what happens in the Scandinavian, it's, yes, there's a cap in terms of what you can charge, but then the government gives you some incentives, subsidizes or takes care of the investor.
Exactly.
Now, here, what are we basically saying? People have taken mortgages to build houses. They've taken loans. They've sold one property to build another. And they've done their financial projections. They know, I've put up this house in Embakasi or this house in Buruburu and all that, and I need to charge so much to repay. And all of a sudden, a new government comes and says, from now on, rent is, the rent controlled amount is moved from 2,500, which is currently now, to probably 7,000 or 10,000. With all those provisos that if somebody doesn't pay, then you cannot distress them, you cannot chase them out because the matter is in court. Now, what will happen? All the people will stop building houses. Why build when you're not guaranteed? And even those who are developing houses that are not necessarily low cost, right, will now feel that the next group that will start agitating is the guys who don't want to live in the 7,500 house, the ones in the 15,000, and because political parties want to capture that vote, they'll say, even though 15,000, we're going to make sure that the rent is capped. I mean, that's politics.
But rent is a problem to a lot of
Nairobians. Rent may be a problem to people, right?
Maybe,
or
it is.
No, rent, I mean, everything, all costs are a problem depending on the choices you make. Right? But if you choose to go and live in Kilimani, you are prepared.
Wherever they live, they spend a great amount of their...
If you decide to go and live in Kilimani, you are prepared to pay the rent in Kilimani.
No, Joe.
Now, there's the solution to rent, or the cost of rent, is in the development of extra housing. And that has to come with incentivizing people, by telling them, yes, the government will protect your property rights, which are guaranteed in the Constitution.
But how long does that take?
But it's guaranteed in the Constitution that nobody can take away your property rights without compensation. That's already guaranteed. And by even telling somebody that you have built a house and you're going to cap the amount of rent you're going to receive it, that's interfering with the property rights, which is unconstitutional.
By the way, Joe.
But the most important thing is, let's look at it this way. The SGR is a game changer. Now, as the frequency of the trains increases between Nairobi to Mombasa, you're going to increasingly see people now moving out to go and live in Mtitwandei, to go and live in Voi, because they know they can commute within an hour.
We'll get to,
now, those are some of the things that you want to look at.
Prof, you had
No, I agree with
once you increase the stock of housing, the rents will come down.
All that.
And let me also say something else that you have observed. You may have observed. With the devolution, and people moving now into the 47 county governments, there's less pressure now in Nairobi because people are finding that, yes, there's more job opportunities, trading opportunities in the counties, right? And the more progressively we move more resources and more activities into the counties, the people who are stuck in Nairobi who are putting pressure on the housing will be redistributed across the country. And natural rents will have a new fulcrum and a new level.
Okay, Prof.
I think I agree with that most. I don't all those what is SGR, all those I agree with. But remember I say remedial action.
Yes.
It's not a permanent thing. Because now we have a crisis with the rents, particularly among poor people. I'm not talking about the fellow who lives on Imara Daima and this one in the west, South Sea. No. I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about the poor slums,
yes,
where people are paying impossible rents. Let me tell you, I have relatives whom I support. I cannot believe when I go to see them in Mathare, the kind of rents they pay for what they live in. You may find that that fellow is paying 3/4 rent the guy who lives in South Sea is paying. It is inhuman.
Yeah.
So remedial action must be taken. While we're doing something called urban renewal.
Yes.
You see, what we shall do is what was happening in Kibera.
Yeah.
You take part of the Kibera and you modernize the thing.
Which I did.
Yeah.
In 2004.
Yeah, but so if you did
when
it,
I was Minister for Housing.
If you did, then you should understand what I'm talking about. So when we're talking about capping rent, we're not talking about South Sea, South B, Kilimani. No, of course. Those are market forces. Those are people who have choices. The guy who goes to Kibera has no choice, my brother. He has to live somewhere.
But Prof, wouldn't it be better?
No, listen. Please, don't really be so hard on these poor people.
No, I'm soft on them.
So what I'm saying, we have to have some remedial action. Say, look, you landlords, actually, even if we calculate the amount of money you have collected from these tenements you have built, you have recovered your capital.
Yes.
I mean, at friends of mine I was talking to, they said, we built this thing 15 years ago. We have recovered our capital. And they were telling me, the easiest place to make money is go and put your money there. Forget about building homes in Rwanda and so on. You don't get as much and so on. But I'm building homes so that Kimunya's son can have a house of his choice to go and live in. I know I'm not getting as much returns. But to go and put money there where I know that I'm punishing a poor fellow, for me as a social democrat, I don't know.
No, I agree with Prof. But what I would like to suggest is Nairobi. And I'm glad he's given an example of the renewal of Kibera, and we had a very super plan. We've had a plan for the renewal of all these other areas that were previously with the county council, right? All these housing estates, the colonial housing estates, the Shelmoil Bahatis and all that. And what I would like to ask Kenyans, if you really want to see your rents coming down, vote in a Jubilee governor, and we are going to renew all this. Because for the last 4 years, we've just been hearing talk, right? But that's a fact, because we have had those plans, but we've not had the opportunity, because housing is a local issue. Housing is a county issue. Yeah, but we've not had that opportunity because the county government of Nairobi has not been in Jubilee hands. Give us this opportunity, and we are going to renew Bahati, we are going to renew Shelmoil, all those Karioko areas, because their plan has been
because
there.
I need to move to the next issue here.
No,
and saying your governor is the problem in Nairobi.
Yes. I can tell you what has been happening in Nairobi. Yeah. But if you see the plans, those plans for urban renewal,
we had them.
Just hold on. Governor Kidero has had those plans for urban renewal
for 4 years.
And you know why? Yeah. Because the county assembly,
which he controls. Which is controlled
he doesn't control it.
But it's controlled by ODM.
Wait until you are a governor to know how those county assemblies are stubborn. Yeah. Once they get in there, by the way,
they lose their party.
They lose their party. That's the issue.
So we should give ODM an opportunity, because they can't control their people to vote on good policies.
That happens even in Meru. It's happened in Embu. I've been in the Senate. I've seen how county assemblies behave, by the way.
Okay, gentlemen. I want us to talk about land. I want to talk about land, because that's something he talked about a lot of times when he was there. But the latest conversation in town, obviously, is what your party leader said in Kajiado. Something about land, something about people not selling land. We played the clip a little bit earlier, and people have been having conversations about it. And people are saying he should be arrested now.
Well, we live in a democratic society. People can say all kinds of things. But whether he's going to be arrested or not, that's another issue. But what he said was the following. And by the way, I have the CD or whatever of the Truth and Justice Commission report, which the government has not released in public. A good part of Truth and Justice Reconciliation report is on land. And one of the biggest issues on land is the issue of communal lands. Secondly, one of the biggest issues on land is how poverty drives people to sell their communal land for a far thing, only to wake up several years later to find out they have nothing to resort to. A government worth its salt should look into this thing and protect communities for this kind of thing, you know. So, and we know
How?
that. Okay, look,
I'll tell you.
let me tell you something. I have seen it even in my own village, where poor fellows sold their land when their sons were away, and the sons come back, and it's a terrible social conflict.
What does the government
the point
do?
is the following, and that's why when you look at the transaction on land, especially in my area, there are all these land boards and whatnot where people go to, and they have to approve before the thing is done.
And you are accompanied by your spouse.
When that system breaks down, and people begin selling communal land as individuals, which has happened in Maasai land, by the way, then all hell is broke loose. Government should come in and protect communities when that kind of thing is happening. What the Prime Minister said was, please stop the behavior. Stop selling land wantonly, because you are sowing seeds of social discord and poverty in Maasai land.
I wish
But
that
some
was,
people understood it
I wish
to
that
mean
is
that
all
he's
he
saying
said.
that some people who
I wish
don't...
that's all he said, to telling people stop selling land. But if I saw it right, there was all these things about these people coming to take your land.
Yeah.
Right? These people coming, right? It's not stop selling your land to anyone,
But
including
also,
to yourself.
but
These people coming to take your land, you're basically creating a situation. And land is very sensitive in this country, right? Land is very sensitive. So when you start creating a situation of telling people that there are people coming from outside their area to come and take away their land, right? Whether it's on a willing buyer or willing seller, but you've already given the impression to these guys that those guys who came...
people from the next village.
those guys who came have stolen your land. Yeah? Now, you're basically inciting these people to start thinking, even if they didn't get a good deal, even somebody who sold land 20 years ago, when the land was 100,000 per acre, land has now probably gone to $1 million. Start coming back and saying, you cheated me. And I've been told those people who came to this place, that is incitement. And it's an unfortunate thing coming at this time when the temperatures are high, right? If that happened, say, 3-4 years back, without campaigns, one would probably see, yes, perhaps that's somebody who's looking at, yes, perhaps we should discuss with the people as they come. But at the point of trying to woo a community politically, to tell them that you should vote for us.
But isn't that poverty issue a real issue in that place? Poverty, people selling their land.
No, it's not
for
poverty.
a song and then...
It's not poverty. People are not selling their land for a song because of poverty, right? No, people are selling their land for all manner of things. Some want to move from the rural
to
specifically
come in
Maasai land. In Maasai land, they don't sell their land just because of poverty. The Maasai will never think of themselves as poor, right? People will go and they will, and they're a very difficult community to work with in terms of when you are engaging. You see them starving, yet they have their cows, but they will not sell. They are proud people. They have a certain pride within themselves. They will not sell their land because they are poor. Right? They don't accept poverty because they own the land. And for them, they value land and their livestock.
We need to move. Yes, yes,
Let me give you an example, Amos. This I've seen in my own county.
Yeah.
People live around the lake.
Yes.
You know, they've been tilling the land, fishing and so on. And all of a sudden, somebody comes from Kisumu.
With some money.
With some money. Offers them some money. Yeah. And innocently they sell.
Yeah.
Okay. And then a pattern develops where people are just buying land near the lake. I had to go there and tell them, look, wait a minute.
Yeah.
You know, the thing you're doing is very dangerous. Yeah. Because basically, these people buying this land very cheaply for very high returns very soon.
Yeah.
Very, very high returns. Keep your land.
Yes.
Be patient, okay? You can even mortgage your land to a bank, get a loan, but don't sell it.
Or partner with these guys.
All right, thank you. All right, thank you, gentlemen. I'll come back to you in a moment.
People need information to get value for them.
I'll come back to you in a moment, Prof. Yes, so we want to go to Hassan Juma and Zinze Kibiko. They've been following what people are saying on social media, and I just want to hear what people are saying out there. Hassan and Zinze, watu wanasema nini huko?
vizuri manake nafikiri mdahalo wafaa kuendelea hadi saa 6 since.
True, the conversation also as it's happening much in Studio Joe, a lot of the conversation is also happening online, and a lot of people have been replying a lot to the conversations that we've been having from the conversation that Yvonne Okwara had earlier to what is happening right now. So we're going to take a look at some of the feedback that we've been getting from you guys, especially in regards to what we're asking tonight. What is the most important thing to you when it comes to manifestos? Is it education, food security, or employment? All right, so Hassan, let's take a look at some of this.
Maybe we start with this one. Simon Kaifa. This is what we require in Kenya. Gentlemen, debate, but on rents.
He disagrees. Okay, no problem. Then Alexi comes in and he says, the people who cast the votes decide nothing. Those who count decide everything. Then there's one reply here from Gitonga earlier on from Susan, who was part of Yvonne Okwara's panel. And really, Susan said, most young people don't read political manifestos. So Gitonga, you replied and you said, yep, that is why we are mostly taken for a ride. So if you're a young person and you plan to vote come August 8th, are you reading the manifestos that will be launched in the coming days? Okay.
Katebe Saddam Kibete, I hope I got that name right. Wakenya wachache sana watapiga kura kulingana na sera za viongozi tunaongozwa na misingi ya kikabila.
Okay, so there's someone here who has a funny hashtag as their Twitter handle, The Socialite. You say, dear politicians, are these manifestos implemented or just given before election, all right? That is why we were asking today, are manifestos just empty premises or are they something that actually means something, you know? Take a look at this one.
Huyu bwana Katebe Saddam Kibete anasema hapa Kenya chakula ni cha mno, kisha afya, usalama and security, masomo, education, kisha miundo misingi, infrastructure.
I agree with education. If you look at Singapore, there was a time Kenya and Singapore were literally at the same pace, and then Singapore really reformed the education system. You can see what proper education does to our country. All right, take a look at this one by Emmanuel. No matter how good the manifestos are, we citizens want the implementation of pragmatic measures and policies to deal with the realities. Hashtag action.
Eli Arab Kogo wanaomba kazi jo wanasema I say sina kazi jameni.
That is true. I mean, I'm not surprised if Eli is asking for a job. 25.5 million, that's the working age within Kenya, and we are rated as one of the highest with unemployment rates compared to a neighboring countries such as Uganda and Tanzania. Okay.
Kisha asema huyu Daniel Kendagor, yote haya yaenda pamoja. Chakula bila usalama ni bure, ajira bila elimu bora ni bure, usalama utangulia na muhimu zaidi.
Haya, Victor anasema manifestos are good even though they are just but copycats. Okay. Let's see what else. Oh, I love this one, Hassan. Have a read at it.
I just need a leader who will assist my fellow persons with disabilities, not to be used.
Okay, okay. So right. So there's one here that also says, by the magician, politicians promise Kenyans for their own interests. Okay. So these are just some of the feedback using the hashtag Kivumbi2017 that we've been looking at. Of course, this is not the only place that we've been having our eyes on. Also, if you are streaming live on YouTube, we are also keeping a look at all of these comments right here. All of these comments, the conversations that are happening. So whether you're also streaming and watching us live from our Facebook page or on www.ktnnews.com, we are always looking at the conversation, hashtag Kivumbi2017.
Na mdahalo si lazima kwamba ukatike hii leo, manake tuna kesho kutoka hivyo sisi tumepigia mbizi mitandao ya kijamii. Sema nasi, tutapitia arafa zenu katika makala yote, manake kesho tupo pia tutapitia zingine zilizala ama vipindi vingine vya basi. Nyinyi endeleeni kutuma arafa zenu, bila shaka sisi tupo hapa kwa sababu ya. Lakini sasa na rejesheni kwa mhariri mkuu Joe Ageo na wageni wake Profesa Nyang'nyong'o na Amos Kimunya.
Haya, shukran Hassan Juma. Ulale unono. You can translate that to Zinzi as we wrap up things here on Kivumbi 2017. Gentlemen, closing thoughts, 30 seconds each. Let's start from there now.
My closing thought is that I think manifesto is very important. I remember best the NAC manifesto, which became a game changer. So we cannot say that manifestos are nothing. They can form the basis of tremendous transformation of society, and Amos will agree. From NAC, then we went to a coalition government, and the things that those two governments did made a big difference in this country as compared to the previous 24 years of Moi Smith rule. So I do believe that when a manifesto is well thought out, when you begin planning, implementing the manifesto, when you're writing it, then you enter government running. I remember donors came to me.
Okay, your time is up. Your time is up, Prof.
No, I think I agree with Prof. Manifestos are important, and what I would like to ask Kenyans is, as the two main contenders in this election, as they release their manifestos, let people take their time, go through them, interrogate them, understand them, and most importantly, also now look at, yes, you're telling us this, and where is the track record in terms of delivery? Because it's one thing to have a very glossy manifesto, but if there's no implementation expertise or track record, then it just becomes another document that the Kenyans are talking about.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We've been speaking to Professor Anyang' Nyong'o and Amos Kimunya just about a week or so before we start seeing the manifestos rolling out. But remember, these manifestos that are so eloquently pronounced really ought to be implemented. So we hope that you'll be looking out for what they promise, those sweet promises and the grand, lofty ideas, whether in fact they can be implemented. This has been Kivumbi 2017. My name is Joe Ageyo. Do have a good night and God bless.